This is a research paper by Captain Tyler Williams, United States Air Force, now a squadron commander, and he wrote the work as part of his continuing education. It is his master's degree thesis. The content mirrors the knowledge that we have seen in scientific literature, declassified documents, and implied by government actions. The paper is from 2015, and by now they have surely made countless new updates that are not public. But for now, let's break down what is just the latest in the long line of evidence we've covered showing that the government knows exactly what is happening to this planet: a magnetic pole shift. First up, the confirmation that as of the 2010 magnetic field updates, Earth's field has weakened 15%, meaning that by now, in 2024, we're likely down 25 to 30%. This is confirmed by their acknowledgement of what geophysicists and the European Swarm mission said, that the magnetic pole shift and weakening of the field is progressing 10 times faster than previously believed, and that the field is in fact undergoing a significant shift. I remember when the Swarm mission director said exactly this over a decade ago, that we are seeing the stages unfold of the next magnetic pole reversal of this planet, with the primary concern being the increased interaction between the solar wind and Earth's atmosphere and biosphere, our living world. There is acknowledgement that this is an unmitigated disaster at a global scale, worse than earthquakes, tsunamis, volcanoes, hurricanes, pretty much every other natural phenomenon, with the lone exception being a planet-killing asteroid impact. During these magnetic events, the field drops by 90%, down to only 10% of its normal strength. We've seen that several other places as well in the scientific research. This presents many risks to our planet, and they begin here with the normal technological risk from space weather events, moving on to how it can impact the atmosphere, infrastructure, and cause the death of many humans. I caught very few mistakes in this paper, but this is one of them. When he's discussing the geomagnetic excursions, they're described as being 2 or 3 of them per million years. Well, that's just plain unacceptable. There have been 8 such events, magnetic excursions, in just the last 60,000 years, including the one that we're entering now. And while it is very challenging to spot these when you look further back in time, we do know of 2 major ones in the previous 100,000 years. So the idea that there's only 2 or 3 of them per million years should be absolutely ignored. But right after that, the paper took our side in one of the most important debates in this field, that these events can happen very quickly. Many scientists today are still trying to tell people that these events all take thousands of years, but that is not what the newest and most robust data is saying. We have evidence for several of these events that took place in less than 100 years. We're already more than 100 years into this one, which means that in theory, it could happen at any time. The field complexity and reversal process would get very messy, with not just an overall increase in space radiation exposure, but with areas having amplified exposure as the multipolar component of the field becomes prominent compared to the dipole component. I really like this next part, discussion of the severity of the 1859 and 1989 solar storms, how one took out power in only 90 seconds after the storm began, and how back then, Earth's magnetic protection was stronger than it is now, much more so in the 1859 event. The impact today would be disastrous. This graphic shows what the storm power of the 1859 event would have taken out in terms of the U.S. power grids, and again, with the magnetic field weakening now, the next one is going to be a lot worse than this, likely a total loss scenario, with impacts expanding to the GPS and radio signal communication networks. In their best imaginable case, a minimum of 130 million Americans would be without critical infrastructure for years to decades. This is just the latest in many publications saying that this would result in millions of American deaths. Worldwide, that number would be in the billions. And of course, that's the best case scenario. Then the focus comes to other infrastructure, starting with the food, production facilities, transportation, grocery stores, refrigeration, credit card processing, all fail in this scenario. And of course, there would be severe failures of the technology at the agricultural base level as well, at farms across the world. We're talking going back to handwork through and through. Billions would starve. No food, no water purification or distribution, no gasoline. But it gets even better. The cosmic radiation exposure would be massive, with solar particle destruction of ozone reaching severely dangerous levels. This would cause DNA mutations and severe UV exposure. Imagine several years of 40% or more ozone depletion, with short-term solar storms taking us to near zero for days to weeks at a time. It is well known that for every 1% reduction in ozone, we will get enough UV to increase 1 to 3% in terms of melanoma and skin cancer, so a sustained 40% decrease with intermittent total loss scenarios is an absolute catastrophe for life on Earth, from humans down to microorganisms. There is even a brief acknowledgement of the increase likely in heart attacks and things like dementia, not the dozens of other known health impacts from pregnancy to psychological stresses to cellular processes. All of those ones we have covered at the channel would be amplified as well. They do, however, hit the plant issues. Many important crops show vulnerability to increased ultraviolet rays, including stunted growth, lower yields, and damage to their cellular structures. Up next, they toss in the current magnetic protection of Earth in an excellent graphic, which not only shows the major weak spot in the South Atlantic, which is the point on Earth where the magnetic poles are currently moving away from, but they are set to meet in the Northeast Indian Ocean, which is why you see the two strongest points in red converging there on the other side of the world. The nation, and indeed the world, are not prepared. I speak with people in Congress, the military, and several key organizations, and I can tell you, nothing has changed since this paper came out. The climate stuff has all their attention, well, that and neo pronouns, but the situation of the magnetic pole shift is largely being ignored, even while recent efforts have been made to amplify monitoring of space weather itself. But it's not enough. I fully understand their decision to not extend this work to the extinctions caused by these magnetic events. It would double or triple the length of the paper, even though one could easily imply such things from the evidence given. But don't forget, this is where we focus here at the channel, the evidence of extinctions with magnetic pole shifts. We've shown the key papers, interviewed the world's best expert on the topic. By the way, he told us we're in big trouble if you didn't see that one. If you are new to this information, I am literally begging you. Look right below the video and find the Earth disaster video. This is huge. It's bigger than just the Earth, and you need to be aware of this situation as much as the cultural, political, and economic issues that we are facing now as well. Whenever you're watching, I will see you in the morning for the daily show. Be safe, everyone.